So it has small battery, regenerative braking, downhill energy storage, long total range, because it got over 500 miles on the gasoline tank. No range anxieties because of the gas engine. There was some fairly nice logic as to how the battery and the engine work together. I won't go into that because it's past history. The next level is, this is my current car. This is a Toyota Prius Prime 2019. Now, the Ford Fusion I had for about 9 years. Battery was fine, didn't have to change the battery, but it had a mileage capability in that small battery of approximately 1 mile. This has a significantly larger battery. Notice that it's about a $33,000 car. This car I chose deliberately because I wanted to work with a plug-in hybrid. This is the only car of its type that was available not only in the state of Florida, but the entire Southern District of Toyota. So the push behind these cars from Toyota seemed to be almost non-existent. But what have I got? It's larger than the hybrid battery. They claim it has a range of 24 miles. My experience is I get 35 to 36 miles on a charge. But more importantly, it has a small, highly efficient gas engine. If I'm just running on gas at 75 miles an hour, I get 52 miles a gallon. Not at all bad. So it gives me a total range of 500 miles for the gas, plus another 35 miles for the electric, or as they quote in the advertising, total range, about 540 miles. No range anxiety because gas is readily available. And I generally charge the battery overnight by plugging it in when I get home, and it's fully charged in the morning. To be more precise, I set it so that it charges at 8 o'clock in the morning because the solar panels, which should be referred to on my roof, are not running my air conditioning or my heating at that hour, so I can dump directly from the solar panels into the car. It's a little cheaper to use it myself than to sell it to the utility. So basically, cost per mile is 2 cents in electric mode, 6 cents in gasoline mode at $3 a gallon, and at 12 cents per kilowatt hour. Currently, I have 12,000 plus miles on the car. I've had it 2 years. I have used 29.5 gallons of gas. My net gas mileage on the car is 416 miles per gallon, which I consider fairly green, and if everybody was doing that, we'd probably make a big step toward getting rid of the carbon issue. However, all the buzz is, of course, oh no, let me show this. This is my dashboard display. A couple points of interest. One, the air conditioning is a significant effect. You can get up to 15 to 20% of your energy usage just running your air conditioning. Also notice that my gas tank is almost full, and it has remained that way ever since COVID struck. Now, of course, there's the Tesla. This is one of 3 models that are on the road now. Notice the price is a little bit higher. I'll show prices for the other models later in the presentation. I could not justify buying such a vehicle. At the present time, I'm glad I didn't. This vehicle gets 3 or 4 miles per kilowatt hour. These are important numbers to remember. Miles per kilowatt hour. That's what was on the dashboard display I just showed. That costs about 3 cents per mile if you charge it at home. The mileage goes down as the vehicle size goes up, of course, and the battery is large enough to be used exclusively. And in fact, it must be used exclusively because there is no other option. If you're out of battery, you stop. So therefore, you must find a charging station for a longer trip. Now, longer trip is somewhere around 300 miles. My standard trip, if I'm doing a long trip, is 500 miles per day. That implies I have to charge once in the middle of the day and once at the end of the day. And I personally find that somewhat of a pain. So I don't do it. All right, shifting gears, second item on the agenda, chargers. Chargers come in 3 flavors. The level 1 charger is very simple. You take the cord from the car and plug it into the 120 volt outlet. What do you get? 15 amps, 120 volts, 1.8 kilowatts per hour, and that's a 9-mile range for every hour. Now that's not very much until you realize that overnight you've got 10 hours, that's a 90-mile range, and the most I can get is about 36. So I could do quite well by just plugging into a 120 volt outlet. No rewiring. So this is adequate for the current PHEV, plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. The maximum battery size is approaching 50 miles at this point, as we'll see from the table later on. And these outlets are ubiquitous. You know, any garage is going to have an outlet. So you're all ready to go as soon as you bring the vehicle home. However, you can go a little higher if you want to, or feel you need to. Level 2 chargers. This is the bulk of it. This requires a 220 volt, 40 amp outlet, which is similar to an electric dryer outlet. The lower level car, mine's a 2A. I can only draw 15 amps out of this because that's the way that how it is set up. However, that gives me 18-mile range per charging hour, which means it needs a maximum of 2 hours. Or for a 10-hour period, I could get 180 miles, but of course I can't because my battery won't support that. It costs about $400 for the charger and maybe $500 installation costs, unless you're a do-it-yourselfer like I am, and I just put it in an afternoon, running it from the breaker box out to where the car is. However, the level 2 has an upper level as well. This draws the full 40 amps at 240 volts. That gives you 9.5 kilowatts per hour, or 47.5 mile range each hour. So if I left it plugged in the full 10-hour nighttime, I could get 475 miles out of my level 2 charger, which is more than any battery available on the market. And this is slightly more expensive, but not much. I added another $100 for installation just because it's a bigger breaker. And that's pretty much it. We'll talk a lot about level 2 charging because this is where I think we can successfully do this market. Of course, being an engineer, I have to measure things. And so I measured the level 1 and level 2A charging rates. The horizontal lines are the current. And notice that they are flat. That means there's no peak at the beginning and a very little drop off at the end. So if you plug in one of these vehicles, it's going to charge at its maximum rate for the entire time it's plugged in until the battery is full. You can also see the benefit of the 2A, which are the shorter lines, versus the level 1, which are the 5-hour charging times. I don't need it, except I want to use my solar panels for just an hour or 2 in the morning, as opposed to running all night. We do not have time of day pricing for electricity in Florida, so it doesn't matter when I charge it. So I choose to charge it when the electricity is cheapest, which is when I'm generating solar electricity and trying not to send it back to the utility. So again, these are flat curves, higher charging rate, but very much faster because it's 240 volts instead of the 110 volts. The top level currently is what are called DCFC, direct current fast chargers. This is not something you want in your garage. You're talking about 480 volts, which you don't have available in your house. You're talking about 100 amperes, so that means you need a special transformer. So these are only available in public locations, generally near the interstate highways. And they're essential if you're going to do a long trip in an EV, because remember, you can't in the EV switch to gas if you run out of electricity. You have to find a charging station. These are not required for the plug-in hybrids because you can switch fuels, and in fact, few public plug-in hybrids have the high charge rate. In fact, only the Highlander is the only one I found that does allow the high charging rate. Now, there's a problem, as there often is. We haven't got compatibility. there are 3 different charger plug types, and somebody in the standards area has to knock some heads together to get this done. My hope is at least you have a conversion cable available. And these are not cheap. And this is part of the problem we're going to confront. They cost $10,000 to $20,000 to put in one of the charging stations. And a charging station at that price can only charge 1 car at a time. If you want to charge 5 cars, you need 5 charging stations. More on this later, of course. Now, my car has some controls. I can set the start time. I set it at 8 o'clock in the morning. Or I can set the end time. I have to go to work at 7 o'clock. I actually don't, but somebody might. And you can also pre-air condition at the end time. So if I'm in a hot climate, I am, I could have my car up and ready to go and completely air conditioned. Or you could just say charge it when it gets plugged in. So when you plug it in, power is available, it starts charging. One hopes that if the power goes out, comes back on, it will resume charging. I haven't tested that yet, but I'm just assuming that. Now, let's talk about range anxiety, because this is the problem. It's a real problem because, for example, if I drove to the airport and had to find a charger, I might miss my flight. If I plug it in and the charger doesn't work and my car is empty, I can't go home. I don't want to charge my car on the road because I've got to find a charging station. They're few and far between at the present time. I would be concerned about the charger being available once I get there, or I can see fisticuffs breaking out if it gets really hard. And of course, at mealtime, everybody wants to charge because noon will be the prime charging time because you can go have a leisurely lunch and the car is fully charged. Unfortunately, there's a line of cars at the charger, and it's not a good thing. So this is the essence of the electric vehicle problem. And we have to get between here and there, and that's not obvious. The only solution I can see, and I'll talk more later, is that I can reserve my charger and have it available when I get there, either at the charging station at lunchtime or at the hotel at night. There'll be much more on this as we go along. Other unresolved issues that are still around, the highway tax is a problem because highways are supported by gasoline taxes. Federal 18.3 cents per gallon, states anywhere from 20 cents to more than 50 cents a gallon. And with an electric vehicle, no gas, no highway tax. Now this is a plus until you realize that this will not last because we still have to maintain the highways. So somebody's going to pay, and it was rather annoying when early on I learned that some states are charging extra for the license fee for electric vehicles, figuring that's not a very good way of encouraging electric vehicles, but it's something we have to get taken care of because an electric fleet is not sustainable in the highway tax area. So how that works out remains to be seen. Another thing that concerns me is if I do run out of electricity, what happens? Do I call AAA? And if I call AAA, do they have gasoline? But I can't use gasoline. Do they have a fast charge battery? I don't think they do yet, but maybe they do. Or are they going to call a tow truck and tell me the nearest charging station? I don't know. Don't know the answers. Another issue with electric vehicles is the longer the range, the heavier the battery. And the heavier the battery, the lower the efficiency. Heavier the vehicle. Now, the handling gets better, but the vehicle is heavier. And so you need more kilowatts per mile to lug that battery around. Now, to give you an idea, the Tesla 85 kilowatt battery weighs 1,200 pounds. That's approximately 6 or 7 normal individuals. So even if there's only one person riding it, you're hauling around the weight of a full car load of relatively heavy people. So that's an issue. Do you really want to drag that weight around going back and forth to the grocery store, or is another solution more likely? Also, there's perks currently with electric vehicle. Preferred parking. You go to the airport, you may find some electric vehicle stations right near the door. What you find, however, is they're all full because people drove in their vehicle, plugged it in, and went away for 3 days, or 4 days, or 5 days. So it's not going to work out more later. Another good perk is access to the high occupancy vehicles lanes. Some states allow that, and it's certainly more attractive than putting a dummy in the passenger seat, but again, not sustainable for an all-electric fleet. And here's one I just added. The interstate highway was sort of a disaster for downtowns because everybody went around the town and nobody went downtown. Now, does the same thing happen with charging stations? Are charging stations sparse, and I can't go to interesting areas like national parks, which are somewhat far away from the beaten path? So, just to raise a concern, there may be a fringe effect here that we haven't thought about. Okay, where are we going to charge it? Well, the best place to charge it is the place I'm using. I just plug it in at home. I've got 10 hours, it's a private garage. Apartments usually have assigned spaces. I can do a level 2 charger, although level 1 is probably enough. Vehicles can program the start and end time if you have time of day pricing, which we don't, but often after midnight the electricity is cheaper. You can set your car to charge after midnight and get maybe a 25-30% discount. It's a great location because you got the car sitting there all night. You don't need a very high rate of charge to get ready to go. Another good charging location is work or school, because cars are parked for a long period of time. You don't need a rapid charge if your car is going to be parked 8 hours or 9 hours. Be home and back to work. And since it's a level 1, the EV is not having a high draw because it's restricted by the amount the circuit can provide. Now, the user would have to provide their own cable, but that's standard equipment. I've got one in the back of my car. I would just have to plug it in. I might want to put a locking hasp just in case somebody wants to steal cables. There is copper in the cables. I think if there's enough of them, that's not going to be a major problem, but it needs to be considered. And I'm going to get very aggravated at that point. So I'll probably need a penalty fee for leaving it there after it's charged. The mealtime, long word, 1 in 5 cars need to be electric by 2030. What will it take? You can look it up. But it says there, 80% of all charging takes place at the home, and 15% of not charging takes place at work. That leaves just 5%. Some of that can be done with level 2B chargers at airports and hotels. So the current panic over the slow pace of DCFC seems to be overblown because the only place you need them are where people are trying to travel hundreds of miles per day, and that's the interstate. So maybe again, there's other cables available. But there also should be a tax credit for charger installation. And there is for individuals, but we want to encourage developers. What do people actually do? Well, here's a curve of the average miles per day. And we see it's a peak at about 24, 28, 32 miles. and then it begins to taper off in the 44, 48, 52. So if I take my car at 36 miles charge, I'm well over the peak as far as how many days that I'll be completely sufficient on the